Welcome everyone to this community talk. We're very happy to see you all. This edition is titled How Can Oral Literature Help Improve People's Life and Well-Being? We would like to welcome the speakers, Teshome Mosisa from Jimma University in Ethiopia, Peter Wasamba from the University of Nairobi in Kenya, James Washira, also from the University of Nairobi in Kenya, and also Inge Brinkman from Ghent University in Belgium. Before kicking off, allow me to make three practical announcements. Firstly, throughout the presentation, you can raise your questions in the chat. We'll make sure to discuss them after the presentation during the Q&A. During the presentation itself, please mute yourself. However, during the Q&A, we invite you to unmute yourself, to put your camera on, and to address your questions directly to the speakers. And then finally, be aware that this community talk is being recorded, so we can share it afterwards on our YouTube channel and on our website, so everyone can watch it or rewatch it. Voilà, so those were my announcements. Without further ado, let's dig in. We hope you enjoy this community talk.
So I hope you can see the PowerPoint,
Yes.
which is on the screen. This is our team consisting of Jimma University, University of Nairobi, Ho West, and Ghent University. And we would like to tell about our team project, Storytelling and Young People Coping with Crisis, Oral Narratives and Crisis Management in Kenya and Ethiopia. This is the structure of our presentation. We will start with development and then from that move slowly towards the practice of our team project. So development is an old concept. It comes from biology. It is a borrowed term from biology. And as happened more often in Europe during the 18th and 19th century, this term from biology was applied to social phenomena. And the word development, it came to be connected to positive notions of progress, natural law, and evolution. And during colonialism, development was employed in the colonies to mean the opening up of areas for economic exploitation. So in French, you would say mise en valeur. And the benefits of such development were for the metropole. From the start, however, development was justified as also being beneficial for colonized people. So there were many betterment, so-called betterment schemes, welfare plans, etc., designed in the colonies to live up to this justification. And these colonial claims to development are called repressive developmentalism by Miguel Bandera Geronimo. And despite this historical connection to colonialism, the so-called development era is regarded as something very distinct from the colonial era, only starting after the Second World War. And in contrast to the notion of colonialism, this word development, it came to be embraced by many people of the former colonies. Development came to be seen as a positive term, as a goal to be reached.
Oh, there seems to be a connection issue, which is unfortunate, but also comes with intercontinental connections. Let's see if they can reconnect shortly.
Yeah, thank you. So I have been saying that the SDGs, that actually prior to the SDGs, the African Union created its own Agenda 2063. And the Agenda 2063, interestingly, proposes to putting respect for cultural diversity to practice, calling for a radical engagement with people's experiences on the ground, and also focusing on epistemological models that are different from the classic developmental models. And this move towards decolonization of development was in fact not really followed by the UN. And in this sense, the SDGs are a step back when compared to the African Union Agenda 2063. Next slide, please. So C4D is by now an established approach in development. Culture for development, communication for development are crucial, it is recognized, for the welfare and the well-being of people. And so far, oral literature has hardly been taken into account in this. What is oral literature? We see oral literature as all verbal forms that are form cultural expressions, artistic expressions. And clearly such oral artistic expression belongs to culture. Clearly also it is a form of communication. So we can see how oral literature for development as a new approach, how it forms part of C4D, communication and culture for development. So in this sense, we are proposing a new approach, oral literature for development, as part of C4D. Next slide, please. And in our project, we want to focus on one genre in oral literatures, namely folk tales. Folk tales have a very interesting structure. They start with once upon a time in many, many languages. And then after that, immediately after, a problem is explained. So you see a crisis in the story. There is a hunger in the land, or an ogre that captures children, a small animal that wants to win a race from a big animal. So there is a problem, a crisis situation. But that is not what the story ends with. The story ends with, and they lived happily ever after. In other words, in a folktale, very often a crisis situation is being resolved. And can we learn something from that proposal in the folk tales? How can we meaningfully discuss crisis situations on the basis of folk tales? And that is actually the basic question in our project. So sometimes these proposals for crisis situations are very normative. Sometimes they are also liberating, like the one I mentioned of the small animal who in the end wins from the big animal. In our project, we focus on 5 domains. A first domain is ecology. Many folk tales tell about situations of drought, of famine that is related to ecological crisis. The second domain is poverty. In this, we look into class situations and poverty and rich wealth distinctions in folk tales. In a third domain, we look at disease and disability, because many folk tales have characters that are in a vulnerable situation, and how do the stories represent these. The fourth domain is gender, because many stories tell about the relations between man and women and how are they represented. And that ties in with, very often with notions of exclusion. And also in other stories, we see how exclusion and processes of othering, how they relate to crisis situations in the stories. We do not see these 5 domains as separated. We really also study the connections between these various domains. And furthermore, we try to look into the changes the oral narratives underwent in the process of colonization, Christianization, Islamization, etc. I now offer the floor to James Washira. So next slide, please.
Yes, thank you. I think I now take over from there, and then we focus on our project has 2 approaches, and the first I would want to consider it as academic. And the academic aspect of the project entails the collection of a number of folk tales from the four languages that Inge Brinkman already talked about. And then we also have back to the we are not here. Sorry, but I already. So I hope now I'm audible. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I think there is yeah. Can some my audience from this end were saying they couldn't hear me.
There is some background noise, but we can hear you.
Yeah, okay. I think now they can hear me fine. Thank you. I was explaining that the project has two components, and the first component has an academic input where we are interested in the collection of quite a number of folktales, and then we analyze these folktales, and we target the folktales from the four languages that we are working in the project. And then after analyzing these folktales, we want to identify crisis situations. And then we focus on the next component of the project where we want to engage with some youth through performances, through creative workshops. And in the end, we also want to develop an educational tool that can also be used in Kenya and also in Ethiopia. Next slide, please. Yeah. And the four languages that we are working with are one, Afan Oromo. We'll also have narratives, folk narratives, folk tales from Kenya, and we target two languages. We have some in Swahili and some in Chidigo. And we also have narratives in Gikuyu. And we think that these languages are important. And in some point, we'll also show you that some of the performances that we are going back to even some of the languages that are considered endangered. And the next slide, please. And then our partners in this project entails a cooperation of four universities. One, we have Ghent University. Then we also have Jima University in Ethiopia and University of Nairobi in Kenya. And we also have Whole West in Belgium. Next slide, please. Good. And then we also have the project, the promoters, we have Inge Brinkman from the African Studies at Ghent University, Teshome Musisa from Institute of Oromo Studies, and then from the University of Nairobi, we have Peter Wasamba from the Department of Literature. And then we also have working with a very brilliant team, and I'm not going to read the whole team members. So you have a list of the very fantastic team that is making this project very interesting. Okay, next slide, please. So one would ask why folktales, and we are seeing a connection between folktales and epistemologies. And one of our logics, we are inspired by the work of Bonaventure de Souza Santos, who thinks that by not getting to recognize the knowledges that these folktales encapsulate, then we are participating in the colonization of knowledge. So we are doing something to also decolonize knowledge to kind of stop this neglect of some very precious knowledges about how to deal with crisis in different regions, and especially to give these knowledges to the youth, to give them another alternative way of thinking on how to deal with crisis in life. And then we are also very inspired by the work of Otmar Etten, who is an authority in literary studies, who thinks that literature constitutes knowledge about living and how we live together. And Otmar Etten is also very important in this project because he argues about transcultural literary studies. And for crisis, I don't think there is a way we would want to imagine crisis to be restricted to only one culture. So the idea of trans becomes important. This is why we want to also look at what it offers to this project, because he also thinks that narratives offer different logics on how to deal with crisis. Next slide, please. Sorry, so we have now Brinkman. Sorry.
Okay, can you see me and hear me?
We can see and hear you. Yes.
I hope so. Yeah, you can?
Yes.
Because my
yes.
computer is still off. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. So we have a system now of going to schools, marketplaces, weddings, etc., where we have performances of oral narratives, and from there, on the basis of those stories, we have workshops together with the young people that we are engaging with. And we had some workshop tools. I will not go into detail, but we often start with an analysis based on narratological models: who speaks, who sees, who acts, and who does not speak, who does not see, and who does not act in the story. So based on those characteristics, we try to analyze the story. Next, please. And I will really quickly go over the tools we use. We have Think, Pair, Share, which is a tool that allows also for the more introvert people to speak. These are educational didactical tools that can be used in any course situation. And we use them during the workshops really to have a debate on, do you see a crisis in situation in this narrative? What characters cause the crisis? What characters help to resolve the crisis, etc. And after Think, Pair, Share, we very often do, the next slide, please, text to self and text to world connections, in which we relate what is in the story to both the wider world and the personal living world of the participants in the workshop. So the youth is really invited to create that connection between the folk tale we have been listening to, and then with their own history, their own background, their own experience. And this will also see how fiction functions in society as a way of talking about various different things, including taboos. Very often after that, we even get to more visualization, which is the next slide. So we invite the participants to make drawings, to take pictures, to do videos on the narrative. And that creative process really helps to develop new ideas on the situations that we have been discussing. And sometimes we conclude with more performance-based theatrical exercises, like we even try to replay the narrative in a theater setting, or we do hot seat, whereby we have one participant in front who embodies one of the characters, and then the others have to guess. So it's like a game, but it allows really for more empathy with the characters. I think that's already the next slide. And very often we finish with evaluations, either oral or written evaluations of the workshops. I think the next slide is offering an, oh no, we also do, because as said, some of the stories are very stereotypical. So then we start thinking, do we need to change this story? What are the alternatives? Do we keep the story as it is, but indicate that things have changed in the meantime? What do we do with these more stereotypical aspects of folktales and myths? I think the next slide is already offering the floor to Peter Wasamba, who will speak about the University of Nairobi's involvement in Digo communities in coastal Kenya.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Inge and the team. I'm Wasamba. Just a minute. We manage sound systems. Okay. Okay. Yes, it's amazing. Okay. Thank you. So, I'm Wasamba from the University of Nairobi. We've been part of this project for some time, and we've always been focused on oral literature for development over the years because we are driven by the philosophy of Paulo Freire on the need to think about education as liberation and working with communities to understand their situation, to work with them to identify their challenges, and then work with them again to propose ways in which they would want to deal with their challenges. And that is where oral literature for development comes in, because quite often, what we have experienced on the ground is a philosophy of development that, as Inge explained, has a colonial orientation. But now, after in the post-colony, it has a government power, which means the government sits at the center and decides what is good for communities. And in many cases, such interventions fail for lack of or uptake and also resistance. Now, through oral literature for development, it means that we work with communities and we become students of communities in supporting them to deal with their problems in their own ways. So the Digo community is one of the Mijikenda communities. Mijikenda in Kiswahili means 9 villages. And these are, Digo is one of the 9 villages and one of the most populous, and geographically, Digo is the one that is on the southern part of Mombasa, bordering Tanzania, and we also have Digos in the northern part of Tanzania along the coastal region. This is a community that is deeply traditional, but also Islamic, and is because of the position that it occupies as a tourist destination, is also being influenced by tourists that come and stay or that visit or briefly. And in our strategy in this project, we wanted to work with the community theater, which is Kwale Arts Troupe that we've worked with from 2002, to identify crisis situations in the community and how these crises have been dealt with in the past by community and what can be built upon. This is based on the understanding that often not young people are now trusting internet and whatever is Western, contrary to what they have been brought up in by their parents and also communities. So the idea is to make young people trust indigenous knowledge system that is being ignored and use that as a foundation that can help them deal with crisis of climate change, gender, health, poverty, and such other concerns. So we used this theater community, this community theater Kwale Arts to perform in selected areas where we can get audience. After the performance, then, as Inge said, we have the process of think, pair, and share, through which community is given opportunity to contribute to what they make based on the performance. And one of the performances that we have had is that focusing on, if I translate in English, it is a brother's misfortune is not shared. And it's about poverty in a community that has been thriving, a community that had a good, reliable rainfall, or that had food, that had forests. Then certainly because of human action, or we have drought setting in, and there is acute food insecurity. And a brother denies a brother food. That leads to death of one of the children. And it's unfortunate. And after this performance, which is a theatrical, members are taken through that process of reflection and also conversation on what needs to be done. And it is young people leading this, because young people trust listening to fellow young people as opposed to senior people. And this is what Kwale art troupe does. And normally they start the performance by doing some kind of a mobilization effort or through a musical parade, passing through where people are collected. And as they sing and perform to the venue, they are followed by audience. And this makes sure that everyone is aware there is a performance, and they go to the collection point where performance takes place, and immediately it is over, there is no, people do not disperse. That is when the workshop begins. And at the end of it, the outcome is what is it that we need to do to address this problem? And like in this case, there was the issue to address climate change in terms of resilience, in terms of interventions, and then there is the need to address food insecurity in the area, and then just appealing for common humanity and the spirit of brotherhood and empathy to ensure that in times of challenges, sharing may mean caring. And next slide, which is actually, I think, the end of it, is and what is interesting is that this play is now being performed in Chidigo, which is a local language which is threatened with extinction, and this therefore helps us also to preserve this language that is endangered. Next. Yeah, so these are some of the photos that we took during the performances and which are also captured on our website. And it just celebrates how a community that is far away from the center, that is the city, 600 kilometers or 500 kilometers, is doing work with the community groups through folktales to address issues that are currently affecting young people. I thank you. Go to. Now to show me, yeah.
Next slide, please. Can you indicate? Can you ask for the next slide to show?
Yeah. Next. Yeah, this slide. Do you hear me?
Yes, we hear you very well.
Hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so Mike. Do you hear me?
We hear you. We can hear you. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, this is Tashome. I'm representing Juma University, Institute of Oromo Studies. Juma University is one of the theme that is collaborating in this project. I'm gonna talk about the practices in Juma University, more specifically at two sites, Jima and Nakam towns. Just before going to the performances and workshops, the first year of the project was establishing a setup where offices were secured and other infrastructures were established in the offices, like computers, cameras, and others. And in the very first year as well, we made an attempt to contact different stakeholders in different sites, Addis Ababa, Nakamt, and Jimma. We were very successful in contacting these organizations and institutions. They were very keen to work with us, and they are also working with us till today. In the second year, as it is the implementation phase of the project, and there are always complaints from the institutions whether there is an impact created as far as the project's designs are concerned. We had to emphasize on the performances and workshops. So we held two performances in two different sites, Nakamt, at Nakamt town, Nakamt Secondary School, and at Jimma town as well, Gada Secondary School. First, of creativity, where we used fourth-year theater arts students to perform oral folk tale, which was changed in the form of script to performance. We first the students actually presented it in the second annual workshop, and we took the video of that, and that video was displayed to those secondary schools in both sides, Jimai and Nekamt. That was starting, those videos were starting ones, and based on those videos noted by Professor Ing, we used different techniques of performing the tales, and after the stories are told, people are grouped into different groups based on different grouping techniques indicated by Professor Ing, and then interesting discussions were made, and sometimes thought-provoking and debatable issues were raised. And even I remember in Nekamt, there was a debate, and there was a gendered kind of story where the females said this story narrative has to be changed. And actually there was an argument, and that is possible. And oral literature by its nature can be changed. So there was a consensus, and alternatively someone told us an alternative story of that tale, which was very interesting and which has got, in fact, gender balance. So we successfully held the performances and workshops. And in this year, we organized the stakeholding organizations and institutions, where about 40 individuals from different institutions and organizations were participated on the meeting. And we actually gave them a brief introduction of what has been done so far, and the need for emphasis on tales in crisis situation management, and it was quite fruitful. And on the same dates, performed another script from folktale, which will be used in the upcoming performance and workshop. And another successful achievement we can talk about the implementation is the project has got another pillar called media communication. We were using different media outlets to just access the community, and these media outlets include mainstream media, such as one of the mainstream television called OBN, and the other one is one of the mainstream radio called still OBN radio. And we were also using several times Jimma University FM radio. And in these media outlets, we were trying to valorize the importance of indigenous knowledge, more specifically oral folk tales, which could just give us crisis situations, not only giving crisis situations, but also the way out, which could be very helpful for the youth to learn from. As far as the lessons learned from the project implementations and the ongoing project is, there is a huge potential and interest among elders to share their stories. That was fascinating for us. And there is also an immense interest among the youth to listen to elders. And as you might have seen in the community talk, one of the display, the image, the picture was an elder telling to the students, and which you will find in the next slide. And you can see that picture by itself can tell thousands of words, and you can see how it is, how the youth are highly interested to listen to elders and apply stories in their lives and participate as well. They were participating in telling stories and also in reacting to certain stereotypes such as gender stereotypes and hierarchies, including othering. We also observed intergenerational link. The forum actually made us learn that it is possible to create an intergenerational link if we work on. And there is also success in transferring oral folktales to theatrical performances. The next slide, please. Yeah. Our future plan is we have already have the video, so we will use that video to different sites. This time we will have 3 sites. The site other than I mentioned earlier, Addis Ababa, we have contacted the 3 sites, and we will actually do the performance and workshop in the 3 sites. Administrative bodies are contacted, stakeholders meetings were held, users are actively engaging in all the 3 sites. The next slide, please. Now, when it comes to sustainability, after participating in performance and workshops, some scholars are already owning it. Some schools are taking their initiative to organize clubs in high schools and use oral tales to revitalize areas, moral lessons, which are important to shape the young generation. And institutions are also owning it, especially Jimma University. We are incorporating oral literature course, both in MA and PhD programs. This is an uptake in Jimma University curriculum. When we were implementing this, there are some challenges observed. One is OL for the hub compensation. The understanding we had previously and the policy there at Ghent University, there is a kind of mismatch, and we were having challenges in financial reports. The other one is security because of political issues. Still, we were very creative in a way that the themes are not of political, rather they are more of cultural and social, and when we explain for them, they agree, and we actually managed those crises as well. Inflation is another challenge, actually very practical challenge. Some of the money allocated, especially for logistics and travels in the very first year, and the price of airlines tripled and even more than that, and almost the budget allocated for both travel and logistics just go only for travel, where we are having some difficulties in this regard. Financial reporting as well, because of some misunderstandings. There are recurring questions coming, and we are struggling with that, and hope we manage the first 2, and I hope we will manage this as well. And we are very, very much happy in implementing this project, and we are also very much happy for the fact that you gave us this interesting forum. This is what I, as a member of Community Talk, actually, I began just participating many years back, and coming here to just present what I did is actually a privilege for me. I thank you so much, and I just leave the space for my colleague, James Wachira, to wind up the presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, Teshome. And now, in conclusion, we are thinking together the fact that folktales have also changed, are also not static. And in this case, we are taking into
Sorry,
consideration
there is some echo
different,
there, and it's difficult.
yeah, the different contexts, artists, and we are also aware that folktales have a history, and we want to reconnect our youths to this fact, and for them to become aware of the historical consciousness and encapsulated in the folktales that we are collecting and that we are going to work with. We also would like to make the youths aware that folktales provide an alternative avenue or a means of knowledge for crisis management, but we are not providing these folktales as the solutions to their crisis, but a way of provoking them to think of how to think through the crisis they could be facing. But we are not more so emphasizing on the moral lessons as a final solution. But we want also to take to offer this forum a practical experience. We also want to provide these folktales as a model and to develop a tool for crisis management. And a very interesting aspect happening in Kenya is that in Kenya there is a curriculum review across the education sector, and one of our team members is working with this team to also see that this the product of our work might also help to the curriculum developers in Kenya to develop a tool that would also be accessible to students in Kenya and also maybe across Kenya, because we also have our output in different formats on YouTube and publications. And with that, I stop here and then maybe I invite my colleague Brinkman to. So, that's what we have to share with you, and may I now invite your feedback, and we are very grateful for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you all for the nice presentation. There were some minor connection problem, but that's part of the charm of having a global webinar. So thank you very much for the presentation. I think the pictures gave us an illustration of how it looked like, the work you did. So we would like to open the floor to the audience. So if you have a question, don't hesitate to raise your hand and then unmute yourself to raise your questions directly to the speakers. Apologies. There is one question in the chat from Baja de Bela. Would you like me to ask the question, or would you prefer to do it yourself? Otherwise, I can do it. So firstly, he says it's a very interesting community talk. May you reflect on the key lessons and implication of the storytelling for education, the curricula for research, so the potential social impact, and the future of academic cooperation to development from Africa and European perspective. I think some of the elements have been captured in the presentation, but would one of the speakers like to elaborate on this?
Yeah, thank you for this question. What is so interesting is that folk tales, and mythology, it can help really for youth to connect with their own history. So Digo people discussing their problems on the basis of Digo stories. But what is so interesting is that you can also take this material to other contexts and see how, for example, I've even worked with a Kikuyu story in Belgium. So a story from Kenya, from central Kenya. I showed it and told it to students in Belgium. And on the basis of that, we started discussing all kinds of things like peer pressure, jealousy, beauty ideals, on the basis of, so, I mean, there are always thematic concerns in these narratives that speak to youth everywhere in the world, and they will know how to relate it to their own experiences. And that's so interesting. So it's both the connection with their own history and the connection to other story worlds that they are not yet familiar with. I hope that answers the question.
The future of collaboration.
Yeah, what is very crucial for us, James really indicated that instead of a classic north-south model, we are really trying to have a south-south, north-north cooperation. So we have Ho West, UGent, Jimma University, and University of Nairobi. And by now, an agreement has been signed between Jimma University and University of Nairobi, and the two universities will directly cooperate on this issue. So instead of the classic, North knowledge export to South, we really have much more of a grassroots approach that also connects South-South with each other. That's really the idea. I hope that is an answer to the question.
Which indeed is a very interesting approach to include also the South-South perspective. Allow me to go to the next question. Someone wanting to elaborate on the willingness of the youth to learn about this folk's tale. He says that. Sorry, there's an echo. But now maybe we lost him. Peter or Inge, are you still there?
Yeah.
Or James?
Yeah, we are here.
Okay. So the question is like, what about youth that does not even want to associate with their ethnic languages anymore? Are they willing to learn from this folktale? And how can this best be reverted?
I can respond to that. And that is the assumption that we are trying to deconstruct. Youth may not be interested in learning their folktales if it is told in a certain way and in certain places. As I mentioned, this is Kwale art troupe that is composed of young people themselves. And some of them have become celebs just by telling stories, and they are earning a living from it, performing in different situations to create awareness on certain issues central to society. So through our research, we have actually challenged that assumption that all young people do not want to learn from their folktales. I can give you an example of my daughter who is now keen to tell a story in my local language, however broken her language may be, because they are also realizing that having your identity is more important than looking sophisticated and Western while you still remain an African. And I think it's our duty to help them take this route to rediscover their roots instead of encouraging them to assume they hate everything African and from the past. Thank you.
Just to add the point,
continue.
That was our assumption, of course, before we began the implementation. But after the implementation of the performances and the workshops, what we realized actually was that the students were highly interested to listen to tales that elders tell. And they also just do the same for each other. The same goes as far, it might be the case in another part of the world, of course. But so far as even my family is concerned, my little daughter always early in the morning requests me to tell her a story. And I just tell her. And she still insists requesting me. And so I am implementing the project not outside this world, but I'm implementing it at my home to the very daughter I have, who is highly interested to it. And I'm very much happy about that. And I know that it will create an imagination in my child, the world view, an imaginary world where she can actually develop the faculty of her imagination, which will later on help her to be a very excellent architect using that skill to the practical world. So literature is a mother for every field, creating an imagination, cultivating an imagination in children, in youth, who will just use that for other fields of study. So practically, I have observed that they are interested, and it's actually nice if we just encourage that.
Thank you for your question. I think it's a pertinent issue because the next question is closely related to it, and it's also partially answered, I believe. Someone asking, civilization is playing a huge role in eroding this important information, how to ensure that youth embrace these folk tales. So I think that has been covered, but that maybe
This
shows how this
may
concern.
I begin?
Yeah,
This is
please do.
quite true. Even my child in my family actually is highly interested to look at Tom and Jerry, and she's obsessed with that. And my kids were obsessed with this too, and that is not bad, of course. Having an experience which is there at global level is okay, but also of course, the only mechanism we can have for this is orienting our children, including it in the curriculum, and also using it at different stages of, at different educational levels. For example, at KGs, at KGs, we can use stories of different kinds for our kids. And at primary level, we can use different tales and also ask them to identify different language skills. And we can teach the different language skills using tales. We are teaching language skills, and at the same time, we are teaching the values there, the morals there. So it's possible to actually use it and try to actually manage those eroding factors, of course. Yeah.
Thank you
Could
very
I
much.
add? Could I
Sorry?
briefly add to that?
Yes, please do so. Yes.
So, of course, if you break a leg, you just go to the hospital. There is a lot of knowledge in hospital by which you can be helped. But what we are saying is not exclusive. So we don't, we're not saying that people should only listen to folk tales. Of course not. No, but through folk tales, you can discuss crisis situations in another way. And also that does not exclude reading or watching or consuming other literatures. And the danger of a single story is a TED talk by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. I think it's very valuable. But what we want, and what is really making youth tick, is to have this reconnection with their own history, and it really works. And you are enthusiastic about it.
Thank you for this addition. I think it's very valuable. I'm a bit afraid we're running out of time and that we have to close this community talk. But again, we will publish this probably early next week on our website for everyone to rewatch it. And of course, don't hesitate to reach out to us. If you have further question on this, we'll be happy to share it or to forward it to the speakers. But for now, I'm afraid I have to say goodbye. But firstly, allow me to thank you all so much for attending this community talk. We appreciate your attention and your participation. Sharing experiences and insight is valuable, and we're grateful for your contribution. We were excited about this topic, and given the questions that were raised, shows that the audience was also very excited about it. So, special thanks to the speakers, Professor Teshome Mosisa, Peter Wasamba, James Bashira, and Inge Brinkman for their insightful presentation and discussion on this project. Jimma University, Ethiopia, University of Nairobi in Kenya, Ghent University, and Ho West in Belgium. Good luck with your future endeavor. You're all together now in Kenya this week, so we wish you fruitful exchanges. I personally learned a lot, and I'm sure the audience did too. Looking ahead, we're excited to also invite you already for the next community talk that will be on the collaborative drawing technology, a step towards digitalization for development in urban communities through creative arts. That's a project between Universities of Applied Arts and Science in Belgium and University of KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa. So this will take place on Wednesday, June 25th. So please mark this in your agenda. We warmly welcome you to join next month as well. Stay tuned. Follow us on our website and social media platforms for updates. We wish you a wonderful day and hope to see you all in June. So goodbye and have a nice day. Can I just ask the speakers to stay online for a little bit while everyone leaves the webinar?